Hey everybody, it's Rafi at Zerb, and I got another video for you. This one is on the drop-down component in Foundation. Now, this is, again, not to be confused with the drop-down menu component in Foundation. This is for general content instead of a navigation. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So you can toggle it from a button, and it creates this drop-down. You can also hover over things and open a drop-down, and it can contain any type of content. As you can see here, we have a form, but over here, just some text. So there's lots of options to configure these drop-downs. I'm going to show you some of the code and just explain how it's built. So over here, I have this nice button, and it's just made with a regular button. So we might already know how to make buttons. If not, we have a video for that. So button with the class of button. There's nothing special about this button, but it does have the data dash toggle example dropdown data attribute. So what this does is it tells the JavaScript that, hey, this is a trigger for a dropdown. So data dash toggle is using our toggler component in Foundation to trigger this thing. So you'll see this very often. It's a repeated pattern, data dash toggle, and then it's pointing to some ID. So this is example dropdown, but I can call this form dropdown because, as you see, it will have a form inside of it. Now, somewhere on your page, and it doesn't have to be directly after the trigger, it could be anywhere on your page, even at the bottom, we'll have this div with a class of dropdown pane. So dropdown pane is where your dropdown content will live. So the ID on this dropdown pane needs to match the trigger so it knows what to open. So form dropdown. Okay, so now that these IDs match, this dropdown pane also has data dash dropdown attribute on it. And this is what actually tells JavaScript that, hey, this container is a dropdown. And so when we click on this button, now it's triggered to this dropdown and it opens it up. Now, interestingly, I have a form in here, and you can see that the form automatically got focused. So you can see the cursor blinking over here. That's a nice feature of dropdowns. It's a data attribute that you can add. Data dash autofocus equals true. So that is if you have a form inside of your dropdown and you want it to automatically focus when open, then you add this data attribute to your dropdown pane. And so that's really nice, especially for accessibility, but just general usage, it's really helpful to do that. Now there's lots of data attributes that you can add to this component. So let's take a look at the plugin options down at the bottom of the docs page here. So there's lots of different things you can configure. You can even make the drop-downs open on hover. So with the data dash hover, you can change the vertical and horizontal offset. So if you don't want that drop-down to be right up against the edge of the button or trigger or whatever that it is that's opening it, you can offset those away from each other. And there's lots of other ones here. So you can have it close on clicking or close on click outside of the drop-down. So lots of different options that you can configure here. So definitely use these. So it doesn't have to be on a button. It could be on an icon font instead. So I'm going to put in this setting icon here, and you can see that that could open up the drop-down just as well. So really the only thing that's unique about the trigger itself is the data dash toggle attribute pointing to the correct ID. And so we can also make this work from a hover. So I'm going to show you the difference here. So here we have a button with data dash toggle example dropdown -1, and this one is a hoverable dropdown. So the difference here is that the dropdown pane has a data attribute of data-hover equals true. And it also has data-hover pane equals true. And so what that means is not only is this going to open on hover, but when I'm hovering over the drop-down pane, it should stay open. So those two JavaScript data attributes together get this desirable behavior in this case. So lots of cool options, really easy to style. You can just use the drop-down pane class to style this. You can change the border, change the background, just with that one simple class. And again, the trigger is not tied to any specific type of element or class. You can use it on pretty much anything with data-toggle and make sure that ID matches. So that is the drop-down component in Foundation. We teach all of this and a lot more in our Intro to Foundation class, so make sure you check that out. We'd love to see you there, and thank you for watching.